Have you ever wanted to discover what's missing in your life? Metaphysics is available to all and is part of your life even if you don't know it. Welcome to Metaphysics, a view through the veil with Barb Crowley. Together we'll explore the mysteries behind metaphysics and how to use it to have a deeper understanding and advantage in life. And now here's your host, Barb Crowley.
Hi, this is Barb Crowley, and welcome to Metaphysics, a View Through the Veil. Today, we're talking to Angel Millar, and he has written a book, which is perfect for right now, Transcend the Chaos. And this provides a unique working model for navigating our world today using the 6 C's: connection, creativity, craft, culture, character, and consciousness. We've just covered it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Angel was born and raised in England, where he studied fine art and fashion, and is a well-respected hypnotist, martial artist, and lecturer on personal growth, archetypal patterns of behavior, and spirituality. So, Angel, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you, Barb. It's great to be here.
Great. So, how do you start? There's so much in there. I didn't quite know where to start. We talked a little bit before we came on creativity and the lack
That's
of.
right.
Yeah. But I'm not quite sure where you want to start here. You actually start with connection.
Yeah, well, we can. So I go through a lot of different things in the book. That's really focused in the last chapter, although it kind of sums up what I talk about in the book. But yeah, well, maybe let's talk about creativity and chaos, because certainly we're in chaos right now.
I know. Chaos we know well. Creativity we're lagging.
That's right. That's right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
It is a I think a loss, but I do remember when kids would go out and just on their own in a stick, and are good for hours. And now everything's scheduled and arranged and has a plan. And I worry about that. But as I said, you talked about losing creativity in the 90s. There was a big drop in creativity.
That's right. Yeah, so creativity has been measured in America for about 50 or 60 years, and it was going up for the first few decades, and then around the 90s it started going down. And some people would say, well, how do you measure creativity? And well, there are ways, and it's the 2 different measures. One is diversion, and one is a conversion tests. So conversion, you converge on the correct answer, and then diversion tests, you give as many answers as possible that could be right. So if I say to you, what can you do with a pencil? That's a conversion test where you could say, well, I can draw a picture, or I could mark my child's height on the wall, or I could I could cut it up and I could make it into a little model of to float on the water or something like that. So potentially there's an infinite number of answers in a divergence test. So that's how you test creativity, who can come up with these different ideas. And it wasn't noticed originally. It was actually tested in England, and originally it showed that people who were very intellectually clever, who would get the right answers on tests, will actually prove to be slightly worse at divergence tests. They couldn't understand the notion of doing lots of different things with one thing. But creativity is important. We tend to think of creativity as being related to art and design, which I studied, but it has a much bigger impact in that. And children who score high on creativity tests, or have high CQ, as it's called, that's a much better prediction than IQ of who's going to end up being a lawyer or a doctor or an author or a fashion designer, or basically the people who shape society for better or worse. So if creativity is going down, we're going to have less of that. We're going to have fewer doctors and lawyers and fewer good authors and movie makers or fashion designers or whatever it may be.
Right. Well, doctors and lawyers, I put them in the black and white world, not in the creative world.
Well, yes, yeah, I mean, maybe, but I mean, I do talk a little bit about language and the use and possibly the misuse of language in political campaigns and even
Yeah,
in law, and a catchy slogan can sway someone in a legal case as much more than the evidence
true.
potentially. So
True. Yeah. We
yeah,
do go
so
with entertainment.
that's right, and that's not
I
just
know.
Americans, everyone. So.
What does this mean for us as a species? The lack of creativity. What's happening? What
Yeah.
will happen without that?
Well, that's a good question. I think America tries to get over that by importing people from other countries.
Yeah.
So,
Until
Silicon Valley.
recently, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That yes, that the H-1B visa issue has
Right.
will put a
Right.
stop to a lot of that. That is true.
Hmm.
But I mean, I grew up in England and I came here on visas. I'm an American citizen now, but
Right.
not to defend that because I think it's more ambiguous and should you cut that off or should you cultivate it? But it is kind of known that among immigration lawyers that H-1Bs are a way of underpaying people that you bring here. You get cheaper labor. So
H-1B,
yeah,
you'll have to explain it to me. H-1B is a visa, the working visa?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and technically, this isn't in my book, but technically, an American company would need to prove or demonstrate to some degree that they couldn't find an American to take that position. But if you speak to immigration lawyers, it's kind of an open secret that everybody knows that they run an ad and then they don't interview people or they say no thanks very much and then they hire someone from abroad very
Right.
often anyway, not in all cases, but very often. So
Yeah, at a
so
lower price, you
that's
think?
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, for
Well, that's
sure.
what they
Yeah,
do with women. You
yeah.
you
There is
know?
that as well. Yeah,
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 that's a
yeah,
woman thing too. But,
yeah.
it gets you in there. So that's the other
Yes,
side of it. It gives you the opportunity, you know.
of course. Yeah,
And I
yeah,
would think too, the person who was picked up from their home and traveled and moved their life is going
yeah.
to be more open and more creative than the
That's
person
right.
who's been here and gotten comfortable and just gone along.
That's
Yeah.
right. Well, I actually do talk a little bit about that as well. And in a study of 3,000 executives, 3,000 plus executives, it showed actually that if a CEO has 1 year abroad before becoming a CEO, that they perform an increased profits by about 7% more than their
Wow.
rivals. So, and you can see why. And again, I'm an immigrant to your land, but as someone who was on visas for a very long time, I can tell you that yeah, there are things about being an immigrant that are horrible but very beneficial. And one is, of course, getting comfortable with risk. If you're on a visa here, you can be deported really at any time because your employer can say, sorry, but we're just terminating your position, and that means it doesn't mean oh you have to look for another job. It means now you have to leave the country because your
Yeah.
visa is tied to that position. So every day there's risk and uncertainty, and that might go on I mean, for me, it went on for about 15 years. So, getting used to
Wow.
risk,
I never thought of
then
that
yeah.
as being
So,
there.
so
Yeah.
that's it. So you just become used to risk after a while. And then contrasting different societies. I mean, England and America are very similar in many respects, but they're also very different in some respects. So you can kind of pick the best of both and
Hmm.
leave what's worse. So, this understanding of different cultures, obviously starting your life over, having to meet all new people and having no support, these kind of things
I can't
prepare you.
imagine.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
imagine that. I mean, I
It's
went
it
from New York to Denver, and that's
right.
big. Although I,
Yeah.
I actually did study in England about 50 years ago.
Ah, well, there you go. We still
So
did it.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was a long
Yeah.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
long time. And I still talk to friends that I met there.
Ah,
We're still
great.
in
Good.
touch.
Good.
Yeah, which is
Excellent.
pretty amazing. Yeah.
It
And they're
is.
now in Australia. Everybody booked.
Oh.
Yeah, everybody went different places.
Yeah.
Yeah. But why is it so important um, to survive chaos. Creativity and chaos
Yeah.
always in my mind go together because
Yes, they can. That's right.
chaos is blowing things up, and so is
Yeah.
creativity.
Yes.
So I put
Yes.
those two together. But is that where
Yes.
you're at on it?
Well, yes. I think that, creativity is that is true. When some new invention comes along, it blows everything up.
Yeah.
But I think also, the creative mind it kind of picks things and puts things together in strange ways. So it kind of needs this chaos. So you can take something from art, something from business, something from music, something from physics, whatever it may be, and then this strange amalgamation creates something new. So the chaos is an opportunity for creative thinkers for sure.
Hmm. And you came out, you're a fashion designer. Do
I
I have
was,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then made the move to hypnotist, to lecturer, to I mean, that's quite the move. It was that when
Yes.
you came to the US? Is
Well,
that
I still work in design, but
oh, do you?
yes,
Yeah.
I appreciate the chaos of lots of different things. But I studied fashion design at St. Martin's College, which is kind of the world's Harvard of fashion. And
Hmm.
when I was there, we would hang out with Alexander McQueen and some other people I know became really quite well known, such as Phoebe Philo, who was always really talented.
Yeah.
So, it was just great to be around these really interesting people. But then, yeah, and I came here. I worked in textiles. I worked for a fashion designer in England for a while, but then I also have sort of migrated into other areas, working with people one-on-one or writing books,
Hmm.
hypnosis. So yeah.
How did that happen? That's kind of a weird transition. How did
Yeah,
that happen?
yes, yes. Well, I studied hypnosis actually with a friend of mine, and rather like whenever someone tells you that they are a hypnotist, you can't help but ask, how in the world do you become a hypnotist?
How did that
And
happen? Yeah.
yes, that's right. And so I did, and he said, well, he's teaching a course on hypnotism, which was certified by the National Guild of Hypnotists in America. And so I took that course, which was a really fascinating experience, actually,
Hmm.
and not really what you would think of when you think of a course, sitting at a desk doing something. We were in a small but very comfortable office, putting each other into hypnosis all day long and then talking about it. I mean, I've never been so relaxed in my life.
Was that in England or was that here?
That was here, yeah,
Yeah.
in Manhattan. We did that, yeah, which
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
pretty fascinating, yeah.
That is. I've always been
Yeah.
fascinated by that and where you can go with that. And then, the planting memories and false memories. I'm amazed by that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't done that.
Yeah.
I hasten to add, but yeah, of course there are dangers, and that has happened. So
Yeah.
I think you have to be careful about what you're doing.
Hmm.
So yeah,
And who you're doing it with. I mean,
that's
there are
right.
some people
Yeah,
that, they become unstable.
yeah.
That
You have to be
you've
careful
hit
about
a
that for
point
sure.
of, oh my
Yeah,
God, somehow we just broke the foundation here.
yeah,
Yeah, a little frightening.
yeah. That's right. That's why I personally wouldn't work with anyone with any sort of mental issues, and I don't use it as a therapy. I use it for gaining confidence or stress management. I mean, it's ideal for stress management because
Right.
it's so relaxing. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
The only time I've done it was trying to quit smoking.
Oh
And I
yeah.
have to admit, I'd leave and light one up right away.
Really?
It was
That's
like,
not good.
this isn't working.
Yeah,
But eventually I did quit smoking, but
good.
so something worked. Um, so you talk about self-confidence, and that's a
Mm,
big part of
yeah,
of your book, of some of your C's, right?
right. Yes. Well, yes, confidence definitely matters. I do talk about why St. Martin's College produces so many top designers. At London Fashion Week, which is the equivalent of New York Fashion Week, of course,
Mhm.
roughly half of the designers studied at St. Martin's, but there's actually about 300 fashion courses in England. So it shouldn't be overrepresentative to that point. but it is. And I look at why that is in the teaching, and part of it, of course, is that you, unlike most other colleges, you're told that, well, why you need to pursue what's of real interest to you, so that you end up doing something that's totally unique, rather than, oh, you need to, do this how we're showing you. So there is a cultivation of this uniqueness of the individual, but there's also another element which I think is less talked about, and that is the sort of public humiliation of students, where you work on a project for a month and then you really don't know, and it does happen that maybe you'll be critiqued in front of all of your classmates, and the critiquing can be absolutely brutal.
Oh,
So,
geez.
you can feel destroyed by the end of, and it's not, sadism. The point is that, if you go out into the world and you become anything of a public face, whether it's a fashion designer or an artist or a musician or an author, you have to expect that the media and other people are going to, rip you to shreds at some
Right.
point. And it might not even be fair. Maybe you do great work, but they've just decided now's the time to rip you to shreds because they've talked you up, and now it's time to drag you down.
Yeah.
So you have to get used to that and just let it, just let it go over you like it's nothing.
So they create a thick skin for you
Yeah,
to go out into the world with.
that's right.
So you're confident to create. You're
That's it.
free
That's
to
it.
create. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And so, if the media does trash you, you don't care, because who are they? Are they what have they
Right.
produced? So you just ignore it.
Yeah.
But, and I think maybe this is possibly one of the reasons why creativity is in decline, because there's a lot more concerned about people's feelings, and we mustn't upset anyone. But you can't be in the public eye and not be upset. People are going to attack you, whether it's
Right.
fair or not fair. So,
I don't
you
see a
know.
lot of kindness out there.
No, it's terrible.
It's unbelievable. I
Yeah,
mean, you
yeah,
can say the most basic neutral thing, and you'll have
that's
people
right.
attacking you on it. It's
Definitely.
there's a sickness out there.
There
I
is. That's
know.
right.
It's really
Yeah,
frightening. Yeah.
yeah.
And you think that might be part of what is breaking creativity?
Well, I think it could be part of it for sure. I mean, that seems to be a more recent phenomenon, but
Hmm.
it definitely is not good if for example, I won't name the program, but there's a program that writers can use, and to check their grammar and all this kind of, and spelling
Hmm.
and whatnot, which is
Right.
fine. But the adverts a few months ago for it were, that you will feel safe to write. And I think,
Uh,
you know, as a writer,
yeah.
you don't want to feel safe. You want to say something that's actually a little bit dangerous. And same with,
Yeah.
fashion design or art or whatever. If you're saying things that are safe, then
You've lost it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you should just get a
Yeah.
job and do that.
Right.
That's fine. That's not a problem. But,
Right.
the arts have always been dangerous. They've always said things that are, going to open you up to criticism and attack, because you're
Hmm.
trying to push something on a little bit, or expose, hypocrisy or lies in society. So,
Right.
but everything now is about, well, we're making you feel safe to express yourself. Well, you should you shouldn't feel safe.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you've got to strip away to be creative. You've got,
That's right.
other than
Yeah.
that, you're imitating somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So how does creativity help us with the chaos?
Yeah. Well, I think creativity is what makes sense of chaos, and chaos is potentially very, very destructive for many,
Hmm.
many people. But for certain people who can think creatively and think outside the box and think
Right.
differently, potentially it's an opportunity for those kinds of people, and it's better that we are that kind of person than the kind of person who's going to be dragged down by it.
Mm.
So yeah, but in my book, Transcend the Chaos, I begin by talking about chaos, and I talk about the pre-Socratic ancient Greek philosopher Thales, who's the first philosopher that we know of. And he said that everything is water, which is quite strange, but he seems to have meant that, water is always transforming from, clouds being a vapor, then rain, then ice, then back to water. And it's in this
Right.
constant kind of cycle and constant state of change.
And it,
And he'd probably seen a volcano with streaming lava, so you get this
right.
burning sort of liquid. So he seems to have, that's why he thought everything was a form of water, and this kind of chaos. But there's a more recent philosopher who died a few years ago called Zygmunt Bauman, and
Mhm.
he talks about liquid modernity and said, that we live in this liquid modernity where everything is kind of slippery and you can't quite put your finger on it, or it slips through your fingers. You can't quite define it. And of course, we do talk about, going with the flow or having liquid assets or
Right.
gender fluid. And so,
Yeah.
I think he was right. But yeah, so we live in this time that is very much one of constant flux, and you don't
Oh,
quite know
yeah.
what's coming up, whether it's going to be a calm sailing or a storm or something else.
Yeah.
But creative people have to, take this energy and transmute it into something.
Right.
Whether that's an artist or a CEO or whatever it is, I'm not making a judgment, but people who can think outside the box are able to take this energy and kind of channel it in a direction.
But people and corporations especially do not like outside the box.
Yeah,
You know,
well,
they
yeah.
don't support it in many ways in their structure. You know,
Well, I think that might be changing a little bit. I do
I hope
mention,
so. Yeah.
yeah, I hope so as well, because it is, you need that outside the box thinking for, um, you know, to stay relevant as much as anything
Right.
else.
Right.
But I think I think some CEOs do recognize that. I talk about one of Samsung's headquarters where they built sort of meditation rooms into the building. And they wanted to create um, uh, areas where different people from different departments would run into each other, and that this would spark new ideas that they wouldn't
Hmm.
have at their desk. And actually, I think it was the CEO of Samsung said,
Yeah.
you don't have your best ideas at a desk. And so he created this environment where people would have these random meetings that would spark new
The
ideas.
water
So
cooler meeting. Yeah.
that sort of thing,
Yeah.
yeah. So
And
he,
that's why I think everybody wants, the back to office thing. The companies are pushing you have to come back to the office. And people
right,
are resisting it because they hate
yeah,
that commute.
yeah, that's right.
But that energy level of other people running into other people, chatting, that is
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah. And I
yeah.
think that's what it's about. Unfortunately, they don't come out and say it. They just kind of leave it like, yeah, we want you back in the office like a control thing.
You're right.
I
Yeah,
really think it's the energy of people
yeah,
together. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. It does make a difference for sure.
right.
Yeah,
So tell me about play in creativity. I see that a lot of people don't play. And
right,
I call play where you're doing something without goal. Yeah.
right.
Where
Yeah,
you're just entertaining yourself kind of.
right. Yeah.
And that to me seems to be very, very important to our
Hmm.
health. And you
Yeah,
don't hear much about that.
right. Well, I don't use the word play, but that is part of the
Hmm.
the discussion of connection that I make, among other things in the book. And I point out that very creative individuals usually connect with other creative individuals in other fields, and it's by getting this sort of novel information that they're able to create something new over time. And often as well, it's people who transfer from one field to another, who are revolutionary in this new field that they go into, because they're able to bring something new to it. So there is an element of play, but I think the things that creative people play with are these different ideas that not everyone else has access to, at least in the same way.
Right.
But I actually do talk about hypnosis in relation to creativity, hypnosis and dreams in relation to creativity as well, which is kind of the mind playing with itself.
Hmm.
And, Salvador Dali, for example, he had a whole very elaborate process of going into self-hypnosis and sleep. And he would do this for several days before starting a painting. So this way it would sort of bring out ideas.
Yeah.
And there have been many other creative people who have used or have experienced dreams where they've just dreamed something. So the fashion designer Karl Lagerfeld dreamed, I think it was the 2005 or 2006 spring collection. He just dreamed it and then he woke up and drew it out, and that's what he put on the runway.
Right.
Paul
Right.
McCartney, I think it was the song Yesterday, he woke up singing it. He
Hmm.
dreamed it and he thought, oh, this is a great song. And he started playing it, and then he realized, wait a minute, I've never heard this song before. I've somehow written it in my sleep, which is very
Yeah. A
intriguing.
lot of
Yeah.
people will call that channeled. They'll believe that
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
channeling in information from
Mm.
another entity,
Right.
from, something out there. And
Yeah.
then people have written books about ideas that come to you are in the air, and if you don't immediately grab them and use them, they'll go to
Yeah.
somebody else, as
Yeah.
if
Well,
they themselves are alive.
yeah, that well, it
Yeah.
certainly can feel like that. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
definitely. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I advocate self-hypnosis for, which is, getting into a state of really deep relaxation, not only just for health and well-being, to kind of reset yourself and let go of the tension that's causing so many people to be sick over a long period. But,
Mhm.
when you are able to enter into a deep state of relaxation, particularly if you're a creative person, that's when you get new ideas come to you, or solutions to problems that you've been
Right.
thinking about that the rational mind just can't figure out because there's no rational solution to it.
Hmm.
So yeah.
A lot of scientists have used that method where
Right.
they can come to
Yeah.
the information, the answer, and then
Yeah.
sleep on it or go away or
That's right. Yeah. And
yeah.
I mean, it's part of our nature really that, we try and figure something out rationally, but then we forget about it. And that's when we get the
Right.
answer. I don't know if you've seen the drama series Mad Men.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a
Yeah.
pretty famous scene where Don Draper says to his copywriting assistant, Peggy, says, just think about it intensely and then forget about it, and the answer will just pop up in your face. And every
Yeah.
creative person knows that if you work hard on something, you just need to stop at a certain point, do something else, and that, or sleep or whatever, and that's when the answer comes to you. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. I've tried to have an answer come to me, but often not,
yeah, but that's the
I
problem. It's the
forget about it
trying. Yeah,
completely and it's over.
that's it. Yeah, yeah, that's when it happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Where does autism come in with creativity? Because
Oh,
there are a lot of
yeah.
people that are what we now call on the spectrum. And I personally
Mm,
think there are more people there than there were 50 years ago. People say, oh, we just didn't recognize it. I don't believe that. I think there are
yeah.
more people now
It seems
that
to
are
be
on
the
that
case.
spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a health expert, so I couldn't
Hmm.
comment on that. And I don't really mention autism in the book to any degree, but I mention it very fleetingly in relation to Silicon Valley, because originally
Yeah.
Asperger's syndrome, and the definitions are always changing, but it's
Hmm.
either seen as a form of autism or linked to autism or the same as
Right.
autism.
They put it
But
on the spectrum.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And it's people who are extremely focused and extremely intellectual on some level about one specific thing. They're sort of fixated
Hmm.
on one thing. But it was noticed, I think, as far back as the 1980s that Silicon Valley employees all seem to have this same mindset that was later,
Right.
I think it was called the silicon disease or something like that
Mm.
originally. And then later on, it became redefined as Asperger's syndrome. And there is a British pop singer who was, or musician who was very, very famous about 40 years ago, called Gary Newman. And
Mhm.
he has Asperger's syndrome, or was diagnosed with it. And, what's sort of interesting is that, he sort of leaned into that and had this personality that was very much sort of robotic and emotionless and obsessed
Yeah.
with cars and engines and things like, and not, unlike other musicians at that time who were singing about romance and smiling. He was, you know, sort of dour and singing about car engines. So, you know,
Yeah.
he was able to make
Yeah.
that work for him.
Yeah. But it does seem that they see the world differently. And
Yeah,
through those
definitely.
eyes, there's a lot of creativity
Yeah, for sure.
because
Yeah.
they're seeing things that I wouldn't see,
Right.
they're
Totally.
seeing it
Yeah.
differently.
Yeah.
Well, we've gotten stuck on the creative part.
Yeah.
Let's look at some of the other parts in your book that you talk about with chaos, really.
Sure.
How to make it through the chaos, transcend the chaos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What ones do you want to go to? Because there's so many.
Um,
You've got character and culture, the 8 laws of
yes.
self-empowerment. You're chock full.
Yeah, there's a lot of details and a lot of facts in there, which I hope are interesting. But yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, the book begins with chaos. I do talk people through some basic practices that they should do every day and basic sort of mindset development. Uh, uh, so I do try to prepare people on a very basic level
Hmm.
for entering chaos and having confidence and to go forward. But yeah, in the end of the book, I talk about connection and culture as well, and
Right.
yeah, character, obviously, which is part of that.
And some of the steps you talk about are, everything from food to physical exercise and,
Yeah,
I feel like people are trying to go there almost for control, to control something in their lives, you know. But you believe that there have some real basic steps there as a support, as you said, as getting ready to go into the chaos.
yeah, definitely. So, obviously, a healthy diet is important.
Hmm.
I do talk about physical practices at the end of the, exercise. At the end of the book, I also talk a little bit about how a lot of CEOs of very large corporations are practice martial arts as well. So I practiced martial arts for a long time,
Hmm.
and you can certainly see why. I mean, partly because it's,
Actually, I don't know why. You're going
oh,
to have to
okay,
really tell me.
okay,
I
sure,
don't know
sure.
why martial arts. What is that? Why,
Yeah.
what is in there that is so beneficial?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think, one thing is it's just very physically demanding, and so you can get physically strong, and you have to be healthy for that, of course, and being healthy and to a certain degree physically strong, is obviously going to have an impact on your brain. If you're unhealthy, you're not going to be able to think of creative and novel solutions. But if you're very healthy and physically fit, you're going to be much more likely to do that. So I think that's, a basic element. But martial arts as well is very much a mental discipline, whether that's, facing an opponent that you know is going to hurt you physically, which is not a fun experience, but still being
But
able
it does
to,
focus you.
yeah, it absolutely focuses
Somebody I
you.
know said, who was in Afghanistan, he said, "You never so present as when a bullet whizzes past you."
Yeah, that's right. That's
And
right.
I thought,
Yeah,
oh my God, you're right. I bet you are. I bet that
that's
does
it.
bring you center.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, if you want to be in the moment, that's the kind of
Yeah.
experience that will do that for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Danger. Yep.
yeah. But so there is, you definitely are focusing, you're practicing risk taking and being able to push yourself out of your comfort zone
Hmm.
considerably. So those are all important things for movers and shakers, obviously. And in some martial arts, there's often a practice of meditation as well, or breathing, especially for, calming yourself down when in a state of stress. Because if you're facing an opponent who's going to hurt you and maybe even injure you, you're going to be very stressed. So there will
Right.
often be techniques to calm you down. So breathing, for example, just breathing through your nose and breathing slowly, or posture. So, you can imagine you're in a boardroom and it's a very stressful situation. You already or automatically, using these techniques, without even thinking about it. So,
Oh, I see.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
can see that. Um, some of the okay, you tell me where should we go with this because there is so much here that and I know we've bounced all around. I've had you bounce all around.
That's okay.
Um, so again, character and culture is a big part of this of your
Yes.
T's.
Yes, and consciousness. So yeah, so
Mhm.
character I do talk about, well, I actually draw from William Wesley Cook, who was a medical hypnotist of the end of the 19th century. And when I was studying hypnotism and becoming certified as a hypnotist, I was reading his book on the qualities of the master hypnotist. And as someone who's read quite a few books on business as well, what struck me was these same qualities are very much what business gurus would talk about you need to develop in as a CEO or as an entrepreneur as well. And so, some of them, many of them are predictable, such as willpower, self-awareness, that we would expect. But for me, the most intriguing one is the first quality of a hypnotist, and that is appearance. That if you have a good appearance, which it might be the way you dress, it might be the way you style your hair, but it would
Mhm.
obviously be things like posture as well and facial expression. That this is the first quality of a hypnotist, that you will, by your appearance, you will already be beginning to hypnotize people.
Right.
And I'm sure that, like me, you have seen situations where there'll be a bunch of guys sitting around sort of sloppishly, and then a
Mhm.
beautiful woman walks in the room and every man sort of sits up, or
Yeah.
or someone of apparent authority walks in the room. Maybe it's a soldier or someone with medals or something like that, or someone wearing, a police officer or wearing a police officer's uniform, and everybody, sits up a bit straighter as well. So
Right.
even just the appearance can have an impact on us.
hmm First
Yeah.
impression. Yeah.
Yeah, first
Get judged.
impression, and
Yeah.
well, and we assume that these people have some kind of authority. So, the general with a chest full of medals, we think, oh wow, he was in a lot of wars. He's a war hero. He's gone
You
through
must
things
be
I could never go
intelligent.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah, intelligent, brave,
hmm
strong. It's not going to take any nonsense from me. But also
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
beautiful woman also has authority as well, because she is rare. She's probably not going to put
Right.
up with nonsense because she has other options. So, already, as
It's
soon as we see these people,
a
yeah.
demand to come up to my level.
Right,
You
exactly. Why
know.
shouldn't she? Because she has those options. So, so
Exactly. Yeah.
already they are projecting authority straight away, and it's just
hmm
something that we have seen. We haven't even spoken to them. And of course, as a hypnotist or as a business person, whatever it may be,
Yeah.
or as a podcaster, you can already present yourself as a person of authority, that you need to step up
Yeah.
to my level.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. I hope I'm doing that.
Yes, for sure.
Good. Well, I'll let you take some water. You've lost the voice there, huh? You good?
I just one more sip. Sorry.
Yeah. No, no, it's fine. I get to look at my notes too.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Great.
you also talk about group loyalty as well as
Sorry.
individualism. And those are in
Yeah.
many ways the opposite of each other.
Y
I mean,
yes.
we have an idea, some people think that we've got a lot of cult stuff going on now. People have gotten into a cult mentality in
Oh, for
some
sure.
ways.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And
For
how
sure.
harmful is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's intriguing that so many cult-like people think that they are the most rational people, and
hmm
we'll often say that they're rational, and then
They
I ask,
believe it. No,
they do,
they
they do.
truly believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. I usually ask them to define what they mean by rational, and they can never tell me, which is kind of a
Right.
clue that they're not. But yes, in regard to group loyalty and individualism, yeah. So you're drawing on, I think, the second or third chapter where I talk
Hmm.
about the qualities of society, and I
Yeah.
try to outline what are the sort of invisible forces that motivate people. And yeah, I talk about these contradictory forces, and one of those is group loyalty and individuality. And yeah, certainly, in the thing about group loyalty is, as I mentioned, that you can't ever quite get rid of it. So people who think that they have no group loyalty have a group loyalty to the other people who think the same thing.
Right.
So, you
Isn't that
and
also culture? The way you grew up and the
oh,
world you
sure,
grew up in,
definitely,
that
definitely.
you're
I
going to
mean,
think the way they think?
sure, absolutely, it definitely is. But I think what's intriguing about the West is that our groupthink is thinking that we don't have groupthink. So, I'm an individual, or,
Yeah.
which everyone thinks,
Hmm.
or, if so, so many adverts, for example, will say, we'll, you can do this in your own way. And like, yeah, I know I can
Yeah.
do it in my
Yeah.
own way because everything is like that. I can do everything in my own way,
Hmm.
but it's this sort of like the message is always, well, look, you don't have to be repressed. You can do it in your own way with
Right.
our thing. It's like, yeah, we know that. It's been this way for 40
American
plus years.
identity is the rugged individualism. And in
Yeah.
truth, nobody could have survived without on their own. You know, it-
No, no,
it's
that's
a
right.
it's a fake, in my opinion. This is in my opinion. It's a fake persona that never
Yeah.
existed. Never existed.
Well, that's right.
And people cannot survive on their own.
No, they
They
can't.
need help from other people, or they need community, or they need others. They
Yes.
really can't survive on their own.
No, that's right.
It's
And it's probably
yeah.
more true today than ever before, which is
Right. But you
why I talk
even go
about
back
connection. Yeah.
hundreds of years because, in
Mhm.
a lot of cases, they're going back like the West was
Yeah.
settled by, rugged individualism. No, there wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
They
that's
relied on each other
for
quite a bit.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I don't I mentioned this in a previous book of mine that I think it was in the 1970s when there was a massive drop off of attendance of clubs and of churches, and
Right.
that's when people started to become much more atomized, and they no longer had the same number of friends that they could count on. But prior to the
Mhm.
1970s, you know, most people would go to a church or synagogue, or whatever it may
Right.
be, and they would certainly be in at least one club, if not several clubs. And so
Hmm.
and so they had multiple people that they could count on. And I think, not to sound old, but I think especially young people today do not realize what it was like a century ago, say when you didn't have even unemployment benefit, and it was your
Right.
neighbors that were going to make sure you weren't starving on the street. And
Right.
of course,
Right.
implicitly, you would do the same for them, of course.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's how people survive. They survive because of their neighbors, not because the government were going to
My
bail them out.
father used to say that during the Depression, when there was no safety net, there was no
Right.
food stamp program, nothing.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
said nobody starved.
That's
Nobody
right.
starved. Yeah.
Yeah.
So everybody fed everybody else,
That's exactly right.
and
Yeah.
the people would show up on your front steps. He said he believed that because his family was one of the feeders,
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
lucky. They had some resources. And
Yes.
he said he pretty much thinks that they told each other. He said because for every meal, they would serve somebody out on their front steps.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just normal. This is what you did.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't invite them into your home. That
Right.
was something that I was surprised at. You didn't invite them in because they were strangers. You didn't,
Right. Yeah.
but you fed
Yeah.
them, and he
Yeah.
said nobody starved.
That's right. Well,
And
even
yeah,
yeah.
nowadays they might starve.
That's yeah, well that's of course
Yeah.
when you have government benefits, it takes the
Tone is
necessity
tough.
away from the
Yeah.
community, but then at some point, then it becomes necessary to have the government benefits because now no one will no one will give you that charity or show you that
Right.
generosity
You
anymore.
also
And
don't know who needs it.
well, that's
That's
right. That's
made
right.
it in invisible really to
Yeah,
society, where in the past you kind of knew,
that's right.
they need some help over there.
Yeah, yeah,
Now you don't know,
that's right. Yeah.
and that's in a way, a big problem.
It is. Well, our communities now are often formed by people that we know online. So our community might be spread around, 100 or several hundred miles, whereas
For
before a
thousands,
community was
yeah.
your next door neighbor and the people on your street. So
Right, right.
yeah, yeah,
And you talked about the 70s, and people started to travel and move a lot more in the 70s.
yeah,
Before that, you never left your hometown. You
that's
really
right.
didn't move very much.
Yes, yeah,
And, that broke up and reformed communities, but not the clubs or the depth or,
yeah,
the churches even,
right.
they all kind of went away. But that
Yeah,
does leave people pretty lonely. People alone
very
are
much
very
so.
much
Yeah,
alone now.
yeah,
And
definitely.
and they say there's a, huge loneliness, you know, uh,
There is. Yeah,
pandemic now.
yeah,
And I I'm lucky enough to have groups, so I don't know.
that's
And
good.
and it's another thing that's hidden. You
Yeah,
don't
very much
know
so.
who's being
Yeah,
left out. You
yeah,
don't know. But how does that figure into your book? Let me bring this back.
yeah.
You know, um, this breakdown of community is really what it is.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I don't address the breakdown of community, but I do address the fact that we need one and we need to make
Hmm.
connections. And I point out that wealthier professionals actively cultivate relationships, whereas poorer people do not. So
Right.
they'll make sure to call some new contact every 6 months or whatever it may be.
Hmm.
And they also cultivate what's called weak ties. So there are strong ties and weak ties. And strong ties are our family and our friends and the
The
people
inner
in our
circle, yeah.
basically, yeah. So, statistically, someone who's poorer is going to be more likely to rely on a strong tie. So let's say they work in an office, let's say they're going to ask
Hmm.
their mom or their brother or their friends in their immediate circle, do you know any other offices that are hiring? Whereas someone who's higher up the ladder and wealthier is going to go to weak tie, someone that they only speak to once every 6 months or every year because they know that that person has a different circle and that they'll
Hmm.
more likely to know about opportunities that their immediate circle doesn't know about.
Why is that?
Well, it's just because they're at a distance and they have their group and you have your group, but there are all these other groups that you're vaguely connected to. So
Yeah, but
if you
why
can
do
connect, yeah.
poor people not reach out to the weak ties? Why is
Uh,
that?
that I don't know. It might be that they don't have very many weak ties, and it might be partly to do with the professions that they go into. I'm not really sure, but that is
Mm,
statistically the case. So, yeah,
right. Could
yeah,
it just be knowledge, habit of, it's
yeah.
in
I
your
think it's.
culture, it's not something you do.
Oh no, for sure. I mean, that's right. Definitely. Different classes and different countries, different
Hmm.
regions, they all have their sort of assumptions about how things should be done. And
Right.
my parents were both very working class when my father was a child, he worked in a butcher's and was paid with meat because that's how his family survived.
Right.
So,
Right.
but built into that, there are assumptions. So I was talking to my aunt about this. So, my last name is Millar, spelled A-R at the end. My father's is spelled E-R at the end, and my grandfather's is the same as me because I changed it back.
Yeah.
But his mother, my father's mother, changed our last name because she said it was snobbish. And when you think, which is completely ridiculous, it's a
Yeah.
perfectly normal, and it's Miller. It's not, Mountbatten Windsor the third. So
Yeah. Yeah.
but when you think about that, what is that saying? She's saying, well, I don't want my child to be more successful than the people around me, I'm going to make sure that that's not possible. I'm going to change his name so it sounds like it's lower down the
Right.
class
Keep
system.
him equal. Keep him equal
Yeah, keep him
in the
equal and
group.
keep him
Yeah.
down and make sure he doesn't rise up and become middle class or upper middle class or even worse, maybe
Right.
becomes above middle class.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's that's a different attitude to what one sees in America today, but
Right. We all want to
this
go
was the
up.
attitude. That's right, that's right. But and
Yeah.
I'm sure it's more like that in Britain now, but the
Mhm.
idea that a mother would change the surname to keep the children down is
Right.
quite extraordinary to us. But there are all kinds of assumptions built into every class and every region, and we
Hmm.
shouldn't. People think, oh, they must be oppressed by people above them. Usually, people above them don't even
Even
think
notice
about
him.
people below them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I know.
you
It's
know,
true. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's stay in your lane. It's
yeah, that's right.
stay in
Yeah,
your lane. Don't
yeah,
try and step out of your own lane.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Um, so how does this keep us in chaos though? Or get us out of chaos?
Yeah, well, I think chaos is a constant. I think that's what we're learning in this day and age. If we went
Oh
back,
my God, is it?
yeah,
Yeah.
if we went
It
back,
feels like, yeah.
it does, it does. And at one point in history, things turned very slowly, but now things
Mhm.
are moving very, very fast.
Right.
And there's potential for real chaos even more than now. But so I think chaos is just the future. But I think there are rules that we can apply to our daily lives and
Right.
to our lives that will help us transcend the chaos or transform it and transcend it. And that is things such as connection, creativity, forging your character,
Hmm.
that sort of thing. So I hope I outlined that.
Right. Don't you think we have to go back to not no chaos, but this
Mm.
has to calm down. I think it'll burn people out too hard, or people will emotionally and mentally retreat. I don't think people
Yeah,
can live in this level of chaos
yeah,
consistently and survive, frankly.
yeah,
And I might be wrong on that, but it doesn't look
yeah.
like we're doing a great job right now.
No, that's right. Well, I think
Yeah.
emotionally retreating is certainly something that we'll see more and more of, and people also on the uh, other extreme, freaking out and doing performing all kinds of antisocial acts as well.
Right, right.
But which we see more of in New York City over the last few years.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's difficult to know how to control the chaos, at least from a government perspective, especially with AI emerging and
Right.
companies and corporations saying, well, we don't need entry level, employees. We'll just use AI. And then people that went to college and spent $100,000,
Right.
and got into debt now find that they, can't be employed. And it is certainly true, not to be rude, but at one point I was reviewing college courses, and some of those courses, are never going to get you a job.
Right.
But no,
Right.
and even in the best of times. But if you've spent a lot of money, or even if you haven't spent money, you spent 3 years getting a degree, and now
Hmm.
you can't get a job in the field you studied for. That's going to be a really big problem in the future. And certainly, AI is good enough to take over many entry-level positions. Although using AI will eventually create chaos as well because it's not accurate all the time and
Not
probably will
accurate
never be
most of the
accurate.
time. I'm not impressed.
Yeah, right now
It's,
it's
yeah.
questionable. Yeah.
Right now, it's more of a promise than a delivery that
Yeah.
I can see anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Although there's an
Yeah.
awful lot of money being spent on making it
I
a lot
know.
better.
I
So,
know. It's almost like we don't know what to do now. Let's run toward the next shiny thing.
yeah.
And because AI, and I use it, and I mean, the description, for this podcast, I'll use AI on it, but I don't find it very good,
No, it's not.
yeah, and I don't find it very accurate.
Yeah.
The other problem,
Yeah.
but um, but it does seem like everybody's trying to run out of our world to the next thing.
Definitely.
I think there's a lot of fear about our own world.
Oh,
you
there
know,
is. Yeah.
yeah, that we're trying to run away rather than toward.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's, and one of the things you have here in your C's, 6 C's, is craft.
Yes, that's
So,
right.
yeah, what is that? Since we're talking about, we're
Yeah.
going into, the kids now, and I do feel sorry for them and their parents of how to guide them into
Yeah.
what to take in college,
Yeah, that's
or to
right.
take college,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
go. But
Mm.
what do you talk about craft in your book?
Yeah, so I do talk about it a little bit in response to AI, actually, and I'm sure that there are ways to make using computer programs a craft. But
Yeah.
what I observe is that there's a reaction again or a response against this sort of instantaneous
Hmm.
amusement that AI and the internet and everything else can kind of spew out for us, and that
Right.
there's a desire to return to what is real and integral, and sometimes even ancient or pre-modern.
Hmm.
Um, and
It's
and
validating. That is one thing. It's validating.
well, and I think it's more obviously it's more human as well, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a premium that is placed on this. And for example, I think it was Hermes revived a town in France, I believe it was, that had a leather factory creating beautiful goods, or maybe Italy, and then people couldn't afford the leather goods because it's handmade, and the factory
Right.
closed down. It decimated the town. People moved away, and then Hermes stumbled across it at some point, and then they paid for it to be revived and revived it, and then used it for their products and revived the town along with it. And obviously, they're charging premium prices. But
Right. Right.
same with Dior. Dior has used traditional Indian beading and embroidery in
Hmm.
India and uses traditional techniques. But at the same time, they also use modern techniques of branding and the internet and AI as
Right.
well.
Right.
But with the actual products they are using, there's a return to the traditional and the handmade, and that is
Mm.
more exclusive and elite and
Rich.
more desirable. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
almost like the furniture industry. It used to be
Yeah,
handmade
that's right.
and
Yeah,
beautifully handmade,
yeah,
and then it became factory made.
that's
But
it.
where,
Yeah,
you might have one chair in your house, now you have six.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so you know, I mean, we look back to the Industrial Revolution and it did change everything, like
Yes, it did. That's right.
furniture. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I guess that's where we're at now.
yes.
But I think then you could see where you were going. And I don't think we can see now where we're going.
No, it's difficult to see where we'll be with AI for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly wonder if we are an ET's AI and
Right.
got bacteria into us, and bacteria took over and they figured it was a lost experiment and left. We're just because I think we've gotten dumber over time,
Yes, well, I believe
so
it. Yeah, I believe the intellect is declining, which is not the same as IQ. I believe that
right,
intellect is measured by things like reaction time, because obviously then you can teach anyone certain things and they'll have a higher IQ.
right.
But there is a basic intelligence, and I believe that's going down. Well, it being able to discern different shades of color, this kind of thing. So that
Really,
the
they
sort of
can see
basic
it
level of
there too.
intelligence, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
going, that's declining, yeah, which is a problem.
And
Yeah.
why is this? Is it the internet
Yeah.
or is it, bad food? I mean, why
Yeah.
is this?
Yeah. I mean, I would be guessing, but I think the internet is part of it because, we don't have patience. Well, that wouldn't necessarily impact intellect, but yeah, I think poor food, pollution, but
Mm,
maybe the way, what people are raised, I'm not sure. But yeah, I think there's something definitely
Happen.
going on.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's where I
yeah.
think maybe we were AI and we were smarter and have deteriorated, you know,
Yeah,
because I can't explain it either. You know.
yeah,
Um, but why does craft help with chaos? Is it
yeah.
just that it's more grounded, it's more hands-on?
Yeah, well, I think as we progress into a more AI dominated world, and AI is certainly going to take a lot of, especially entry level jobs, but
Hmm.
when you think about, for example, artists today, at one point, an artist could make a living as an illustrator not so
Hmm.
long ago. But now, AI can conjure up
Right.
comparable images for free in seconds. And so
Yeah.
being an illustrator is not going to be a great profession going forward, at least if you are creating digital art. I mean, there will be people who can take AI to the absolute max and make money out of it, but most people will not. And at the other
Hmm.
extreme, artists will have to, rediscover more traditional techniques that show that, oh, this is produced by hand. So maybe it's like thick oil paintings. You can see the brush strokes and you can see that, AI couldn't produce this at this point, and then you buy it and have it in your house. Whereas, a century ago, the vogue in fine art was all towards, flat, you know, maybe even sort of computer-like images, even though computers weren't really around. But
Right.
so Russian constructivism is all sort of flat and flat shapes, and it's the sort of thing
Hmm.
a basic computer in the 1980s would produce, but they were doing it in the 1920s. So
Right.
yeah,
Isn't this going to separate us more though, the rich and poor or the cultured and the I don't want to call it
yeah,
non-cultured,
yeah,
but in other words, somebody um who can see the difference between AI and the original has got to be somebody with time you know,
yeah,
and somebody with the education. And that
yeah,
again is splitting the haves and the have-nots.
for
You know,
sure.
it's
Yeah.
making it worse in a way.
It is. And obviously there are going to be a certain number of people who get very wealthy from AI
Hmm.
and certain number of people who've become much poorer because of AI. But,
Right.
in regard to education, I do think that we have, everything at our fingertips now and, access to vast libraries online and, access to podcasts and YouTube
Oh, yeah, the
and
information, the amount
yeah,
of information.
yeah.
But
So
it's,
that
because we talked New York before
yeah,
you're in New York now, and I
yeah.
grew up in New York, and I have always found the bigger the town, the less friends you have.
Oh,
And
for
the
sure.
smaller the town, the
Yeah,
more
yeah,
friends you have.
yeah,
And now our information is big town. Are we
yeah,
getting dumber because of it? Because
yeah,
there's so much information, we pull back and isolate,
yeah.
really.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, I would say that's probably the case, but it's also at the end of the day a personal choice.
Mm,
If the information is there and you have the time, you can study it, whether that's listening to podcasts or reading books for free
right,
online.
right.
And so, at some point we do individually have to take accountability and say, rather than
Hmm.
wasting time arguing about politics or posting memes, I'm going to spend today reading and listening to YouTube videos or podcasts that can actually help me
Hmm.
and can empower me, and I'll learn things and I'll think about it, and then I'll make better decisions about what I'm going to read in the future or what I'm going to listen to in the future.
Right, right.
And because me personally,
Mhm.
I've lived quite a life, I think. I mean, I grew up in England, and as I say, I come from a background that definitely wasn't privileged. And then, I moved to America. This is my sixth book,
Hmm.
and I've done all kinds of
You've
interesting
reinvented
things.
yourself a few times, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And it's hard, but
Hmm.
at some point
Which
we have to make that decision.
which brings us to character.
That's right.
One of your
That's
C's.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't see, when I was growing up, character was extremely important.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
I
Yeah.
don't see it very important in today's world. People are
No.
not, you know, they don't seem to have character, what I call
Yeah.
character, which is a honesty, a commitment to um, a whole life. I guess it's, but you
Yeah.
define character.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. And honesty is part of it, and integrity, gravitas,
Hmm.
and I think, I mentioned this in the book that it's difficult to estimate, but the best estimate is that by the second generation, a wealthy family will have lost its wealth, via its children, and about 90% by the third generation. And
Right.
people who create wealth, or not even, let's say, not even finances, let's say, we could even compare it to someone who makes a name for themselves as an artist or a
Or
musician
even a
or athlete.
manufacturer. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the
Yeah.
CEO or anything,
Right.
whatever it might be, that person has gravitas. They've sacrificed themselves to their mission when they could have been
And
out doing
ambition.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and ambition, and
Hmm.
and there's obviously a big process of learning, of trial and error. And I have this saying, not to go off at a tangent, but that
Feel free.
we should be humble but never modest. And what I mean by
Yeah.
that is, you think of someone who's very controversial, but someone like Mike Tyson, no one could say Mike Tyson is modest, right? He was
Yeah.
out there
Yeah.
biting people's ears off and punching the hell out of them and saying he's
Mhm.
the best and all, really super aggressive when he was younger, terrifying character. But in private, he was practicing boxing until 2 in the morning, and
Right.
every
Right.
day when his competitors were asleep. And it takes extraordinary humility to say to yourself, I'm going to keep practicing this until I've
Hmm.
got it right,
I'm
because
going
I'm
to
not good
perfect it.
enough. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm going to do it till 2 in the morning. He also had hypnosis sessions. He studied Zen. He studied Nietzsche. He's a fascinating individual. But to push yourself and make something of yourself takes a lot of humility, even these people who are arrogant in public.
Hmm.
But to make something of yourself from nothing, that
Right.
is character. But then, of course, then the children inherit the money, and
Right.
then they know how to spend the money, but they don't know how to make it, or they could live off
Hmm.
of their name. You can even
There's
think
no
it's
need. There's no need to
That's right.
to,
That's
to
right.
push for anything. It's all there.
That's it. And then they get really good at spending money, but not really
Right.
good at being creative or thoughtful or anything. You can even think of members of the monarchy. They're a bit like that, the
Right.
British monarchy.
Yeah.
So,
And it's very much an out of touch too with reality.
yeah, yeah, well,
They
they
don't
can
know
be.
what money is. They've
Yes.
never touched it.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
paid rent, or
Where they
have
never,
to
no,
pay bills. Yeah,
that's right.
it's
That's
very
right.
out of touch. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I make this point in the book that the flip side, and where we can be a little bit more pleased with ourselves, is that, people have friends to the degree that they have gravitas, right? People will admire you and be your friend and speak honestly with you when you are someone who has, made yourself, or is pushing towards something with
Hmm.
humility. But we don't like people that just inherited money and they know how to spend it. Those people
Right.
attract hangers on, right? We all know the kind of people that they
Yeah.
attract, people
Yeah.
that want to spend their money for them. They don't really have friends.
And they don't have depth. That's
That's
the other
right.
thing. They're not
Yeah,
going to attract somebody else who has depth because
that's it.
there's nowhere to go here. Geez,
Yeah.
I met you. We spent an hour. I now know everything. There's
Yeah, that's it.
nowhere to go.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's but character in the average person seems to be missing. It's not only the wealthy or those who inherited. The average person no longer will honor commitment, or
Yeah. Yeah.
like basic things,
Yeah.
basic kindnesses even.
Yeah.
It just seems to have gone away.
Yeah, I mean, I still meet plenty of decent people, but
Hmm.
there is an element of that for sure in a lot of people today. Yeah, yeah.
And why is it important?
Why is it important? Well,
Right.
besides
Hot
complete
seat.
societal breakdown and more chaos,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's important for people to be able to, for example, um, stick with their word. If you say you're going to do something, you should do it
Right. To
and
trust
treat,
other people. Yeah.
yeah, and treat people respectfully, for your own sake, because then people will want to remain connected to you. So, I mean, that's part of survival. So,
Right.
yeah,
Right. To feel that we can trust the other person. We can
yes, that's
rely
right.
on them. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have among your C's, the last one is consciousness.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And what does that mean?
Well, I think, we've touched on it by talking about hypnosis and Salvador
Hmm.
Dali going through this process of, self-hypnosis and dreaming and other
Right. And martial
persons.
arts, even
Martial
there we
arts,
talked about
exactly.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Right.
Yeah, and Karl Lagerfeld dreaming his fashion collection. So, what I mean by this is that, we like to call AI artificial intelligence. It's not really artificial intelligence any more than a painting or a sculpture is an artificial person. It's a kind of simulation of intelligence. But
Hmm.
I think as it takes up more and more of the sort of logical thinking on basic thinking tasks for us that we will need to develop our whole consciousness. And one of the unfortunate things in the West is that we have come to think of the human brain or the mind as this machine for rational thinking.
Right.
And
That's
I
breaking down.
yes, and
Yeah.
this is actually a very primitive way of thinking. So even in the medieval period, theologians and scholars, there wasn't really intellectuals at that time, but people who are extremely intelligent, they would tell you that, well, there's ratio, which is rational thinking. We have a problem, we need to solve the problem. There's a river, we need to get to the other side. What's the solution? So we think about that, we use ratio. But there's a higher type of thinking, and that is intellectus, where you contemplate what is, and the divine mind is revealed to you. But we can relate that, for example, to hypnosis. That okay, we have this rational thinking, we think things, but then we go into a state of hypnosis or deep relaxation, and suddenly, poof, we get the inspiration, which is revolutionary and solves some kind of problem that we have, or maybe more than that. And we fetishize rational thinking.
Hmm.
And what people often mean by rational thinking is uh, any prejudice that I like, or whatever works is
Yeah.
rational, which is rational means the process of logical reasoning. That's all
Right.
it means.
Right.
But
Yeah.
people apply it to everything because they think it's scientific. They want to sound scientific, so they say they're rational when they're not.
And
And
it
most of
makes it
what
true if it's rational. If
that's
they
that's
thought
right.
through rationally, then
Yeah.
it's true. And
Yeah. When no, it's not.
yeah.
Most of it is just rationalizing, which is just,
Right.
explaining why your prejudices and stupidity is correct. But, I think, we need to start thinking about our human minds in a more holistic way. So the mind is related to the body. Sick people are never going to come up with brilliant ideas because they have to focus on getting well and they feel bad.
Right.
It's related to our body. It's related to these other states of consciousness, hypnosis, deep relaxation, dreaming. And I think as we go forward, the more brilliant members of our society will realize, wait a minute, the machines are just doing this rational thinking. But if we want new ideas, we have to employ these other ways of thinking. Obviously, there's a kind of resurgence in taking psychedelics in this day and age,
Hmm.
particularly among CEOs, and
Yeah.
maybe it's
Yeah.
partly as some kind of therapy, but it's probably also some kind of, mind-opening
Trying to
experience
break
that they're
down the
looking for.
walls. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, the only way we will survive AI is if we take a more holistic view of who we are and what humanity is. And we're not these we're not these rational machines that are somehow a bit like AI, but not quite as good.
Hmm.
We have many other things about us and that are much more expansive than that. Inspiration. If you look at, for example, how AI creates an image, creates art, for example, if we can call it art. It begins with this blurred image and then it gets sharper and sharper until we see the thing. Whereas, if when a human being creates it, it's not rational, it's not making calculations. This red is 2% too yellow, this, or
Hmm.
if it could just be 0.5% more blue or whatever. It's not like that, the way the computer is thinking. It's inspiration, it's breathing, it's accident, it's the body, uh,
Right.
you know, it's something else, and
Right.
something comes through. And so AI mimics all of these the sort of non-rational genius of the human, but mimics it using some sort of logical process. But for us, we need to rediscover this non-logical genius.
As practicality in our lives goes away, which is really what's going to happen, where a lot of the things we do all day long, we're not going to need to do.
Hmm.
What's going to happen to us? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well,
really, are we going to make it through to the other side? Or,
yeah.
there's going
Well,
to be a lot of time on people's hands. And I
yeah.
don't know if people are good with time.
Well, no, they're not.
I think they're dangerous,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah,
Yeah. So, what do you think is going to happen to humans, human nature as we go forward?
yeah. Well, I think we're in a very precarious time, especially in, let's say, 10, 15 years' time when we have, the first generation that has never written an email, never written an article, because although they're
Right.
supposed to, they figured out a way to do it with AI.
Hmm.
Or in 30 years' time, they're in charge of corporations or departments,
Yeah.
and yet
Yeah.
they don't know how to think.
Yeah. Yeah. This is going to be a problem.
Yeah, it
Maybe,
is.
and
Yeah.
maybe not. Maybe it's going to
Mm.
open up a whole world that nobody knows about because we've been so stuck in making our lives work that we didn't have time. Who daydreams anymore, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet, how much came from daydreaming? When you go back 200 years, most people kind of wandered through their lives not thinking much
Yeah, that's right.
because there
Definitely.
wasn't a whole lot to think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as we go back to that time, and because they didn't write, I don't know what came out of it,
Hmm.
but they certainly did daydream.
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah, definitely. That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we're going back into that world, and I don't know what's going to come of it, what it's going to be like.
Yeah. Yeah, me
Yeah,
neither. Yeah.
I know. I don't know if I'm even going to be around to see it, to be honest.
Uh,
Or how quickly is this going to happen?
yeah, that's
You
right.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who knows?
pretty
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
It
And
is.
I think humans are not good with time,
No, we're
and
not.
especially density. The density
Yeah.
we now have, you go back 200 years and people had a lot of time, but they were also isolated, but you
Yeah,
have a
that's right.
density and a
Yeah.
lot of time. That
Yes.
doesn't usually work well.
No, that's right.
I
No.
know. So it's a little scary going forward.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we'll
But
see.
anyways, so yeah, talk about wandering. Um, you want to tell us where everybody can get your book and do you work with people individually at all? You know, can
Um,
people get hold of you
Yeah,
individually
very
or
selectively, but if they can message me through my website, angelmillar.com. But in regards to buying the book, that's a Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million,
hmm
and pretty much
Amazon?
everywhere, every
Yeah,
large seller will have it. So yeah, so that's pretty
right,
easy to get.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, good, good.
Yeah.
Are you going to be coming out doing book tours? Do you make appearances around
Um,
to
Not
talk
really,
about
but
it?
I think book tours have kind of gone away with the internet. So for
Yeah,
most
from
authors,
with
so yeah,
Zoom. Yeah,
yeah.
here we are on the book tour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do give talks across the US occasionally, but at
Do
the
you?
moment it's just a few times a year. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What are you working on now?
Well, next year, in about 8 months from now, I have a book, "Supernatural Woman and the Male Initiate Bonded Through Dreams," which is a study of the appearance of a supernatural woman in literature throughout history
Hmm.
and its relationship to the genius. So that will be out next year, and
Yeah,
then
that
I'm
sounds good.
also,
Yeah.
yeah, I hope so. And then I'm working on a history of chaos magic, which is a type of esoteric thought and magic that was influenced by chaos mathematics. So that's my latest project. We'll see where that
Yeah.
goes. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, you love living in your little world there too, with the intellectual thoughts of,
yeah.
how's this work or what's going on here? Sounds great. Well, thanks
Thank
so
you.
much for being on the show. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you for
Yeah.
inviting me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. It's
Thank you.
it's a lot of information. Everybody go get your book because we've only scratched the surface, really.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.